how it can work out funding wise.
Okay, good.
So I think it's a good step, And there may, this is the type of thing where, it's really easy for the town to provide in-kind, equipment and equipment time, that's, from week to week, there can be hours here, hours there to run a load of gravel up and grade it in or something like that. So if we get a certain trajectory, what I'm saying is there may be ways to cheaply improve it over time without, too much headache to us or to them. But we'll get that far when we get that far. Route 30 Village stuff, we have one of the speed signs up. Waiting on battery charger for the second one. The southern speed sign seems to be doing a pretty good job. It's just before Barrow's house. The northern one will go somewhere by the golf course. And then Corporal Thomas, I think, is doing a pretty good job, just in terms of some of the feedback that I get, people are seeing out and about. I know that there's, some people that'll say they never see a policeman, but, it's 40 to 50 hours a week, and he's doing a pretty good job of getting around. So.
Yeah.
And I did get some good feedback from Mr. Haas, so that's good. So now that spring is starting and we'll have more people around and pedestrians and stuff, we'll focus on some of the areas like West Road, Mad Tom Road, Dorset Village, Route 7, and kind of push that the way we should.
Yep.
Who's Mr. Haas?
One of the residents on Route 30.
He was the fellow that
wrote a
came in
letter
and he had the group of 60
He had a petition
and said.
That's right. Yeah.
next to the post office.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that guy.
That
Yep.
guy. Yeah, you remember.
Yep. So he sent an email with some positive feedback about the speed sign, so that's good.
Good.
So we're
Yeah, I've noticed it. I mean, it helps me.
in the right direction.
Not that I ever go above the speed limit, though.
That's
The
it.
sheriff has certainly let me go by a couple of times. That was a close call.
Yep.
Rob, was
just
there
gets
anything
you to
about the legal trail?
Pump the brakes.
Yeah.
No updates
Other
about the
than-
legal trail.
Tread lightly still on it?
Yep, they're supposed to do another cleanup day, I think, this spring
Mhm.
with some volunteers. And we're likely gonna get, we're supposed to meet with them, I think, next month.
Okay, so draft zoning bylaw, set the date for the public hearing.
Yep, so it's two parts, so, it is both the town plan, cause there's a minor update to the town plan, and then, basically the redrafting of the bylaw, so we'll have actually two public hearings on the same evening. The town plan is the stuff to, let's see. Stuff to prohibit helipads and landing strips, basically, is the amendment to the town plan. And then the bylaw, again, is the redrafted bylaw. There's an updated paper copy. I'll send the electronic copy and everything around. Updated maps. There's some kind of cliff notes in paper form on the table here. But for tonight, it's basically setting the date for both those public hearings, for the town plan and for the zoning bylaw.
Does the planning commission have to have any more meetings? I know they have their one public hearing,
Nope, so they have done their
they're done.
part at this point. So at this point, it has been adopted by the planning commission and recommended to be sent to the board. So
I don't know how much I want to poke the bear, but
well, this is where it gets into, it can be changed, but if it gets over, and the word is, it's substance, so if the substance changes a lot, then it has to go back to them
oh, okay.
for redraft.
Right, like material changes.
I don't
But
think
if
that
it's
would.
just, if it's,
I've got a
kinda comes
concern.
down to like, is it a material change or not?
Yeah, I
We
wouldn't
can-
think it would be. My concern is, and I should have read this before, is about They have new stuff on stormwater treatment. And they kind of have an easy way, and then, for certain acreage or square footage, they're saying, present a plan according to the Vermont Stormwater Design Manual, which I work with all the time. It's super complicated, and really expensive, and would require a lot of just technical knowledge even to be able to review it, competently. So I mean, I can send something to them, but I'm really concerned about making that a requirement of these regulations, cause it's just, like I said, incredibly complicated. And there would be there's nobody, without hiring a town engineer to review any application that would have it. There's nobody, we don't have town staff who could review that.
And we can ask Brandy. My general understanding of that is that it's in there, but it's trumped by the state process.
Well, sort of, they said
But if the state process were to go away, then it would be.
there's a gap in there where it could be required and a state permit wouldn't be required,
Mhm.
and I think that should be amended to get rid of that gap where either you need the state permit and you get it, or you don't and you go to this, there's a simpler standard in here.
Mhm.
And that's what I would recommend, is that we don't have that middle section where you would need to follow the state permit guidelines but not need the state permit. Because it's like,
Right.
When I design one, it can be $10,000 for people and
Yeah.
$40,000 to install, and it's just
What page is this on, Frank? Where's the section that you're talking about?
320. And
We can look at it later.
actually, page 321, number 4. It says that if you're increasing the amount of pervious by more than 10,000 square feet, you need to present a plan in accordance with the manual. But you wouldn't need a state permit at that point.
Mm-hmm.
State permit would come in at half an acre. So it's this kind of no man's land between 10,000 square feet and 21,000 square feet, where they're
Mhm.
saying you would need to meet the manual, but you don't need a state permit there, and I think that's a mistake, that section really.
Yeah, we're more stringent.
It's becoming more stringent than what the state says, and again, it's just. I mean, I guess the best way to describe it is if you're kind of doing, you're redoing your kitchen, and the contractor starts, and then he's got a question for you. And you have a powwow, and maybe change this, redesign it, and then he goes forward again, and then you have a question. That's the way this permit works. It's not like a wastewater system where you design it, you're gonna get approved. This is very much iterative and back and forth with the state, and you're using their guidelines. You come up with a ton of questions. So I just don't think we should take that as a town, because I don't know how you would enforce it, make sure
Yeah,
it's
but-
reviewed properly.
Must have.
It comes with crazy paperwork requirements that would be useless, but there's also annual maintenance and inspections and reporting that are all part of that manual.
Right.
So if you say you have to go by the manual, all that stuff would be required. Which would be a pretty big burden for something the state has decided they don't want to deal with. So I can write up something more formal, and I'm happy to send it,
So if that is,
privately.
if that's extracted, does it need to be replaced with something that's?
So they've got it, oops, I lost the page again. So they have a number of of thresholds. One is if you're under 2,500, if you're over 25, if you're between 2,500 and
Okay.
1,000 square feet, you do one thing. So I would say
Just
go from 25,000 to half an acre, and under what they describe in section 3, and get rid of section 4 entirely.
Okay.
That's my
Yep.
recommendation.
Yep.
So I'll write something up, like I said, I can send it just as my own personal comment, or I can send it to the board first, if that's something other people want. Either way is fine.
I support it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll write something up and send it to everybody.
Yep.
And we can get, I can send it to Jim Barlow too, to
Yeah.
see about the substance question and see whether or not, if simply
And I would think it's,
redlining.
If we can just strike number 4, but then we'd also have to, if I understand this correctly, we'd have to change where it says
Change.
2,500 to 10,000 square feet, it would go 2,500 to a half an acre.
Exactly.
Correct?
right. And to me, that doesn't, that,
Half an acre is how many square?
21,250,
Okay.
And change.
something like that.
Yeah.
But right, it would be those two changes, and to me, that doesn't seem like a major
Material,
material change.
correct.
Because you would still be meeting the goal of the section, which is to provide stormwater management.
Mhm. And you're still required to go to the state when you're required to go to the state.
Right, and
So-
they did have something in here that says if you need a state permit and you get it, that says you've met everything in this section,
Mhm.
and we accept that, similar with a wastewater permit.
Mhm.
I'll write something up.
Yeah,
Getting-
write something up and then let's run it by.
Getting
Jim
tighter
Barlow.
than the state is
Well,
scary concept.
there was a time when towns could have wastewater regulations and state could, and they were different standards, and sometimes the rules would be in exact opposition of each other, and I think it's a bad idea to be more stringent than the state is on that kind of
Correct.
thing.
Okay.
When you're asking that question of Mr. Barlow, you might also ask, because I know Jack Gilbert will be asking that we take his lot, which is west of the West Road, out of the RRP. So you might ask him if that would also be
So just a
substantive.
map change.
Yep, yeah, for one lot.
This is the law of Nichols Hill.
Yep.
Where's it? Gilbert. In here.
And there's a lot more reason behind that request.
Mhm.
Is-
Mhm.
is-
RRP, and then to be put back into the
Rural residential.
RR.
Yeah.
Jack's down.
Okay, let's see if that is a material change or not. Okay.
So Rob, I know I asked you this before, is there somewhere a redlined version? In other words, I've gone through these before, but without having to just go through every single one again, is there a way to see the things that they've changed?
That's-
No,
Yeah, that's,
no, because it's a completely reformatting.
right.
I mean, I think the best attempt at that, would be, my understanding of the public hearing, Brandy's gonna be here. She's gonna be able to answer any questions of the board, any questions from the public, and you can get into a, protracted, if you wanted to have the old document and, ask questions.
Yeah, no,
you can do
when we
that,
were
but
sitting there,
there's
there were
no
just a
easy way
number of
to-
issues that came up, and like off the top of my head, obviously I don't remember what they are, but I just like to sort of see how they were addressed.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I guess, do we have the minutes from the public hearing where all that came up? Cause I know they
Yep.
were taking down notes. I
Yep.
don't know if Tyler was or
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, no, there's,
It would be useful to have that list of comments that they were going to address so that we
yeah,
could
and
just look at them.
some of the, if you look at the very end of these.
Cause I thought these were the original ones, where people just wrote in on the website.
Yep, some I think are additional. So, some are, if you go to the last page.
Yeah.
These 80 backwards are those are the more recent interactions and requests for recommendations. And then it's got that decision, kind of piece by piece, so there's an RRP map change. There was
So the date of the hearing was the 28th, right?
yes, and then they subsequently, after that, met, at least twice,
Alright,
to review the comments that they got. And I think if you go back to,
okay. yeah, so I see here something about Squirrel Hollow
Like,
and.
yeah, number 70, 58, that's all input that they got.
Forget it.
And they met twice, actually.
Okay.
So they did the 28th and then they met again, I think like a week and a half later
Yeah,
to continue it. So I think if you go back to where it says, I think Beatty on
Wait.
50.
what about this? Chandler, this is you. It says they agreed to make it. I thought you said they didn't.
I think they only agreed to part of it.
They did, the only thing they changed was that Gilbert lot with the Christmas trees.
So they didn't go back and look, because you were suggesting they go back and look at all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
I mean, they didn't even change Jack's, and Jack was right there saying, please change it. But they got it. So they have
Okay.
this,
So this is what, this kind of documents where they've made the
So
changes.
50 through 80 are the changes that came in
After.
as a part of the public
Number
hearing
2.
process.
Okay.
Is my general understanding. So the stuff that's before that is online, the Hurley letter from the BCRC. And then the online portal. And as well as their public meetings that they did last summer.
Mm-hmm.
So that, 50 through 1 are a combination of emails, people going through the portal, and then feedback on the 2 public meetings that they had at the school last summer.
Okay,
And then 50 through 80 is they presented it, they got some feedback, and then you can see the kind of query that was raised, the response, and then the decision, kind of on each one of
Okay.
them. So they did make changes based on some requests.
okay, perfect.
And I think it's kind of, and this is the type of process that you kind of, when you're changing everything, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's an infinite amount of situations out there that you just don't know. You try to account for, you try to do the best you can. I think a good example recently is Manchester did a similar overhaul a few years ago. I believe just in the last 6 months, they've done another edit, just based on some this is how this kind of works out or plays out.
Yeah,
We need-
exactly.
This is not the intended impact that we wanted, we're gonna change that. And then when you get into targeted changes on one thing, it's still like a 3-month process, 3 to 5 months, but it's much more linear, it's a little easier, you're not changing the whole thing, you've got, here's our issue, we got into practical application, these concerns came up, and we're gonna change this to either go back to what we had or remedy the issue. So it is difficult in that respect that it's a brand new document and you can't line them up side by side and say, this one did this one did this. I
Yeah.
think, the crosswalk, I don't have it here printed out, but on the website, each zone had a one-page, kind of one-page before and after with the dimensional requirements and the uses. That's what we have been kind of handing out to people that have, what's gonna happen, what does this mean for me? Such an open-ended kind of question that you best just kind of start there, with is the zone changing? If it is, what is it going to? What are the dimensional changes? What are the use changes? And that's kind of the way to start wading into
Yeah,
the whole issue. But until everybody who owns property in town, takes the initiative to go, hey, what does this mean for me? You're not really gonna know what all those potential impacts are.
yeah, and that's really the value of a public hearing anyways,
Yep.
because, boy, then all of a sudden, they come out of the woods.
Yeah, I think that was, it was very productive. I mean, I think they, they were able to, to accommodate, I think on the commercial stuff over here, they were able to hold a whole nother meeting, engage directly with those folks to kind of negotiate or figure out what it is that they could, outline. And then I, believe they've done that at this point.
Yeah.
Which is, to your point, Henry, that's what the public hearing's for, is to get all that stuff out. So
Yes.
now that's been worked out, and it's,
There are a lot of dramatic changes
Yeah.
in this. And, whether they're good or bad, I'm not gonna put a value judgment, but just all this commercial or mixed use that they're allowing north
north of the village.
north of the village and what was, basically rural residential is, it's basically opening up an entire new commercial district, which, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, I don't know. I guess we'll see over time.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of it's the field club.
Right, a bunch of it's the golf course.
Probably half of it.
Yeah, yeah. But
And
you've
then
got,
there's
Then you get up to
you
Bear
got Bear
Paw,
Paw, yeah.
Bear Paw,
Meadowy.
Right.
the Arc on the corner, and then down to Meadowy.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Ark would be a great replacement for the Chanticleer. A great restaurant. And this zone, I think, would allow that.
Yep. Yeah, and you, in an RMU, you wouldn't have to do a customary home, kinda like traditionally, like in most of our zones, and you can do the more commercial, but it's usually, in the ag zone, it's part of a customary home.
Was Michelle a customary home?
No, they're in the commercial.
Oh, that is commercial.
They do live on the premises, so it would, it's not really considered a customary home because
Okay.
it's, the use is so intense, but.
Yeah.
It's, in that example, it's better to have the business zone. And part of, and Brandy will speak to it, but part of this process too is to attempt to take, uses and properties that are pre-existing non-conforming, and get them into some semblance of conformance, because you get into everything from like due process kinda concerns, because
Right.
people are not necessarily getting treated the same, versus, redevelopment concerns, like when you've got an age-old property that's been X for so long, and somebody else comes in with an idea to do something that's similar but a little different, but it's pre-existing non-conforming, so it makes the benchmark for redevelopment much harder. We're fortunate, we haven't seen that play out with vacant kinda commercial front, but that's typically how that can kinda manifest, is that it's hard to redevelop certain things if they're pre-existing non-conforming. So that was I think one of the bigger overarching goals of the work they did was to try to get that stuff into conformance, amongst a lot of other stuff.
What is that property, right there? That's now general business.
That's the field
So you've
club.
got the inn should be at the corner, right? It's
That's
so
that red thing?
small, right, like what is
That's the
this?
field club.
Is it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, cause that's the entrance to the field club.
But it
It's-
goes all the way to Route
there's-
30
no,
and we don't go all the way
there's
to
another-
30.
There's
a
another
home
property,
there.
yeah, there's a private property that's in between.
Oh, the
It's
pin.
residential, the
Passaro.
Passaro
Passaro.
Yeah.
House, which is residential and is now gonna be
In that,
general business.
in that zone, yeah.
Mhm.
So it's those two parcels. Yep. And I'll send out this electronically to the board, send out the link to Brandy's page, we'll get the town website updated.
Yeah, aren't they also realigning the historic district? Cause I heard they took a lot of, at least at the meeting I was at, they were discussing taking a lot of the field club out of. The
Right.
historic
Yes, the
district.
Which
far
they
end
were
on the
supposed to
west
do.
road is coming out of it,
Yeah.
is my understanding.
like where the,
So we're
where
approving
maintenance.
that as well, or we
Doesn't-
would be voting on that as well.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it would be good to see that
Yep.
map.
Yep.
Yeah, that's on the website, and I think, it's also, the commercial zone. I guess not. I thought the commercial stuff was gonna go to the cemetery. It's not. Anyway. So it'll be, with a motion, it'll be May 16th.
Do we have a motion to have the public hearing on May 16th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Just on the public notice hearing.
Yep.
I think we're just missing the word zoning
Yeah,
at the
typo.
last sentence.
Which,
For the
Second one?
zoning hearing, the second one, it just should say, comment on proposed amendments to the Dorset Town zoning bylaw.
okay. And I will send the answers around for the Barlow questions,
Okay.
when I
Thank
get
you.
them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only way we can see these things up close is by going onto the website, the maps, because it'd be nice to have some close-ups of the villages
Yeah.
for the public hearing, because this is impossible to tell what you're looking at.
Yep, so,
Yeah, there they are.
That's better.
But we don't know.
that's the entire town, but it's high resolution, so it can zoom in.
I thought there were some
This
clues.
is-
These are good.
Yeah,
They're
Which
sections,
ones are,
yeah, there should be,
but they're probably the other,
oh,
Yeah,
old
probably goes
version.
all the way up
Right.
30.
Underneath the big one, there's
Yep.
close-ups.
Possibly old
they're
versions.
segmented, yeah, there's.
But are those the new ones or those the old ones?
That is an old one on top.
Yeah, they are, and I don't know.
I'm not even sure if the website is completely updated, is it?
I don't see the segmented maps yet, so I can ask for that.
Yeah, because I think that should be up there before the
Yeah, we
public
had
hearings,
done,
so people can
there's
see it.
That would be
specific
helpful.
to each zone, so you can,
Yeah.
if you zoom into this, you can see that there's a blue line, which is the historic district.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Oh, so a good chunk comes out
Okay.
Yeah.
of the
So
field club.
Yeah.
This was all in it, and now
Yeah.
it comes out. And I think that's really the only edit.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
this
which makes a lot more sense.
front facing
Yeah.
stuff here
Mhm.
stays in it. But yeah, okay, I can,
It's just so helpful when you can see it like that.
Mhm.
Because here I need glasses for my glasses, and even then it's like so tiny.
yeah, it's hard to,
And sometimes it's just hard when you have to keep
Get
going
on
on
a
your
computer
computer and then
and
trying to
zoom in.
remember what it
Mhm.
looks like when you're in the hearing.
um, there's other accompanying kind of cliff notes and stuff that she's got on the website now that have been updated, I think, so.
Okay. I haven't gone on, because every time I go on, it's not updated. and-
Yeah, when they've gone through, July, January, and then April updates to it, so,
I think you
will-
better answer that.
I will
sent everyone a
circle the
message saying I'm in a
wagons.
meeting. How does
Maybe
nobody
it's
see that?
important.
No, because it's each one of my kids, but.
I know, they're all like talking to each other, and there's something really important that mom doesn't know. Of course, they could text you.
Okay, finance report?
Is this, we have to approve these? April
Do that at the
24th?
end?
Yeah, at the end, yeah,
Okay.
it just came in today, so we can do that under other business.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Um, And on the finance, delinquent taxes, you can see year over year, we're a little bit ahead, which is good. We had one parcel that was like 4 or 5 years delinquent, and they got paid off, so that's good. Fiscal year '23, we were kind of right at the benchmark, expense-wise versus kind of timing where we are in the year. Not a whole lot of newer different stuff lately. And footnote down in the bottom there, we talked about it earlier, with the bond rate being 3.9% for the town office borrowing. And
Did you say 3.9?
3.9.
2.9?
3.9.
3.9.
3.97.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Which sounds good, but it's still more than what it was a couple of years ago.
Right.
Quite a bit more.
Yep.
So, and that's pretty much it for finance, unless there's,
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Do I
I
have a
move
motion?
we accept the finance
Sounds
report
good.
as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
General managers report.
okay,
Is this something we are?
yeah, so that, we can do that, now under the manager's piece, under highway, so we, kind of the normal, spring cleanup stuff with highway, and then, we have bid out, the paving project for Dorset Village, which, includes Cheney, Meadow, Kent Hill, and a portion of Dorset West Road. And the idea is that this is gonna be mirrored with, the water project, and once the water project is complete, we would come in and pave after. We're hoping to, find a way to, at least with the impacts to town roads and some of the funding that was allocated in the project estimate, where we can, to save money on the water, the water project part.
Which part of Dorset West? Because I thought we did all of Dorset West.
Oh, did I say Dorset West?
You did.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You
It's,
mean Route 30?
no, it's Cheney, Meadow,
Kent,
Kent Hill, Dorset Hollow.
Dorset Hollow, okay,
Dorset West, Dorset Hollow.
okay.
All the
No,
way
a
to-
portion of Dorset Hollow, to where we started paving a few years ago.
Okay.
So just to before McCafferty's,
Mhm.
so kind of at the end, just beyond Escher's,
Right,
the first half mile
Okay.
of Dorset.
From
That's-
Route 30.
From Route 30 to
To,
Escher's, basically.
Escher's, okay.
That's in the service area for water.
yeah.
And like our hope is that by doing this and communicating with them, that we're hopefully gonna save them money.
So that's why it's got this date of not
Yeah,
after the,
it's got the, can't start or can't schedule until after September 30th. So there is a chance that this could get pushed completely.
Right.
I don't know, there's a chance that it could come through, there's a chance we could do a portion of it.
right,
You know,
the weather and how long things
yeah,
are open.
and these prices are good for this season. So if we, this would be good through the, basically when the plants shut down, in November.
Right,
If stuff carried over to next spring, we would have to rebid that. We could still do it in the spring with, with technically next year's money, but, yeah, and the vendors are open to that. Typically, this is the time of year that we bid these. We usually do pretty good by getting, 5 different prices. And in this case, Fuller Sand and Gravel was the low bid.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be looking for approval of that tonight.
Can you
What is
remind me
A?
on the A and B?
A and B, right?
So the A is milling or reclaiming of a portion of the pavement, so they're milling 2 inches and then paving 2 inches. So the A is the cost of milling the 2 inches, and then the B is the cost of paving.
Okay.
Okay, so do you need a motion or just consensus? Motion
Motion would be
to
good.
approve the lowest bidder, do we have that?
I'll make a motion to approve Fuller Sand and Gravel as the lowest bidder.
Okay, second?
second,
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
And kudos to Fuller Sand and Gravel, because they,
Do you know them?
oh, I mean, you see their number, 168108,
Yeah.
that falls in my budget numbers, and some of the others don't. So,
We don't care if we know them.
some of the other, yeah, no, they're they're located in Danby.
We've used them
We've used them a
before.
lot.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so we're fortunate they came in with a good number, because it's actually a little bit below my benchmark, but it's not far.
So we're making money.
Yeah, something like that. Better than not being able to do it, because it's, it's too much, which is, usually doesn't happen with paving projects, but with other projects, it can happen. You can go to do all this work, you bid something out, and it's double what you thought it was gonna be, and then you're not
Yeah.
able to do it, so. This is much smaller in scope, but that's, to be continued with the discussion about, hopefully we can, save the water district money by the way that we implement it. Other stuff, happy to report that the fire district has received the ACCD grant for $1 million for the water project.
Well done.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
So the outside,
And having talked to Ben, I think he gave all the credit over at that end of the table.
I mean, the state did a good job. You remember when the administration came down?
Yeah, remember I said, go
February?
talk to that
Was
guy?
it February, I think?
It was in February.
Oh,
No, it was
I don't-
sooner than
I
that.
don't remember.
It was
All
earlier.
blurs. No, it was last November.
And the water guy was there, yeah.
It was last November, because I came out of the woods, and I wasn't very happy about it, but I came out of the woods.
It was
and-
worth $1 million.
He wasn't happy at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, no, so it was part of that, that visit.
Yep.
It's ARPA money, it's money that has to get spent,
Yep.
it's money for infrastructure and economic development. And,
Awesome.
kudos to, Church Street Hospitality and H.M. Williams, because they, basically were able to help us provide some metrics that say, basically there's a line with, here's the improvement, here's the expansion, here's the staff ramp up. They can't do that if we don't do this. And that, that helped
Yep,
to meet the
Great.
state requirements, which was really good.
that's cool.
So this is the same pot of money that Manchester got funding for the sewer line extension. It's the same,
Community recovery and revitalization.
same funding, yeah.
Good, that's great.
So that
Super.
means that more than, it'll be 65% roughly of that project cost will be covered by outside money.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
So great.
And the fire district, we had the pre-construction meeting for the summer's work last Friday, which means it's getting real. The vendor's gonna be, they're gonna be procuring a place to stage, somewhere on Route 30. They're gonna be showing up to start, bringing stuff in, and I think to start work in early June. So it's.
That's great.
Yeah, and there's definitely gonna be some, growing pains with that. The system's old, not all the services can be isolated or shut off, so there means there's gonna be impacts to other people when they replace services, so it could be not fun.
Annoying.
Could get ugly.
Yeah.
But it's a water system, and
You
it's.
gotta go through it.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, it's really, there's no easy or good time to do it.
Yep.
Green
So,
barrels.
yeah, the best news is that they're not paying for most of it, so.
Exactly.
But they are gonna be well positioned for, what we call phase 2, which is potential water main replacement on Route 30 and possible second storage tank on the east side of town for hydraulic purposes. That becomes much more realistic with not having to borrow as much for this first project. And the timing is also such that, the state's gonna be putting more ARPA money into the water investment division the next 2 cycles. And it's gonna get really down to brass tacks in terms of them probably not getting most of that money out the door. So the ARPA funding, some of it can be more flexible in the way that they administer it. So it's, my hope is that this project, when this loan closes, is, we could go up to, the ARPA money makes it a little, we could go up to 80% federal funding. So we could take another 15% of federal funding, but if it's ARPA funding, the way the state is has rerouted it under the treasury rule, it wouldn't be considered federal funding, so we could take more, so, not to be gluttonous, but
No,
Be glad.
possibly at the end of the loan closing out, they're likely to have money,
Yeah,
and they're likely to go.
because otherwise it goes back to Washington.
Yeah, we're gonna buy down the principal more, so that, again, just kind of
Sure.
greases the
Greases
wheels
the
for the possible phase two, and even if, you know, even if there isn't potentially state funding to grant money for phase two, you'd be sitting there with all this bond authorization that you could, you know, if you didn't get, you know, grants or anything through them, you could still fund the loan through them to get a good interest rate, but just, you know, just cover the cost like you would in a normal bond, so you almost get a 2-for-1 type of deal. So that's, hopefully that trajectory kind of stays, like it seems like it might. So that's good. Other stuff, just kind of, you know, normal monthly stuff, getting some grant applications in for AOT, planning meeting for the Route 30 path. There's a kind of bullet in here that we're structuring the study to the way it's gonna get kind of presented. We did some front end kind of public input, and they're doing some feasibility and design, and as part of that, they've come up with a cost figure. And the cost figure on kind of like the really nice separated path the whole way down is, you know, it's really large. I mean, the scale is kind of outside of what we're used to seeing. So what we've talked about at the planning level is to look at kind of a separate option that's a lower tier, pull the number back so that when we present, we could still have, like, here's the nicest, best option, but it's a whole bunch of money that probably is outside the scope of what a small town can muster. But it's there if if somebody wants to donate, gobs of money, it's there. But functionally, there would be some recommendation that, if you did this,
Smaller.
you could put together financially a smaller project, but still achieve some of the same goals. So that's, when we get to probably this summer, Dubois and King is gonna be presenting that study to the select board. And, rather than come in with something that just is,
Inconceivable.
unachievable isn't the right word, but just kind of out of scope for a small town. Rather than do that, we're gonna scale it back a little bit. What kind of feedback we'll get, from the public, I don't know, but, it can be pretty easily explained.
Rob, where's this retaining wall on Mad Tom Road?
It's just up the street here on the paved section of Mad Tom by 440 Mad Tom.
So just that, where it starts winding?
Yeah, just
Okay.
before the big curve, if you know where the big curve is, and the
Yep.
hiking trails,
Yep.
before that.
Okay, yep.
Oh, sure.
And it's an existing wooden retaining wall
Yep.
that will get replaced with stone
On the left?
on the left.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a house up above it.
Yes, okay, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, the wooden retaining walls, it's about, I think, 30 years old or so.
So why would someone give you a grant for that?
It's a structures grant, so state of Vermont has a structures program where stuff like culverts, retaining walls, are eligible, bridges are eligible for state funding.
So this is across the street from Joe Cushin's
Yep.
old house?
Yep, it's right there, yep. And there's, in that process, actually, we're hoping that we can widen the shoulder a little bit, maybe by
Yep.
a little bit being 6 inches, it's 10 inches, but.
Right,
Better than nothing.
Doesn't seem like much, but it's,
it's a little tight there.
yeah, it'll make a difference. And that's we kind of target those grants to be certain size, so that should have a pretty good chance of winning. But we'll see, and that's work that we would do, I think, in-house. And let's see, some of the rest of the stuff is repeat. Most of the rest of the stuff is repeat. But the grand list kind of process is really getting down into the tax year ends 3/31, and then we go out and kind of adjust things and send out changes and get ready, so that's all happening now.
Yeah, one positive thing is the legislature is making all kinds of noises about what the yield bill that heavily determines the level of education property taxes.
Yeah.
They wanted to divert some money away from what was originally intended. You know, at this point, going through the current version of the yield bill, which is pretty far along, is, the numbers are pretty close to what was originally proposed. So, we're really kinda getting concerned that they were gonna give us a big shock to our education
Why not?
tax rates, but now it looks like the tax rates will be, they're up, but they're up at the level that we presented when we did the budgets and stuff, so they're not adding insult to injury, it looks like.
Okay. Have you heard anything about this bill that's supposed to be adding 70 cents per gallon for heating oil?
Yeah, that's 5.
I don't, some of that stuff seems to be spinning wheels.
That one's moving along.
Is it?
70 cents, 70.
Per gallon.
Mm-hmm.
So
Same.
it's,
I think that's moving along.
it's the,
It's a very popular bill in Montpelier.
I bet it is.
yeah, it's essentially making, trying to push people away from fossil fuels for
Yeah.
heating, and doing it through, fees that
Right,
will go.
pricing.
fees-
Penalizing people.
Well, fees that will go to your vendor that provides you
Yeah.
fuel
Fees
oil.
paid
and
by
then-
the
All the
fuel
housing
oil
up in Chittenden
salesperson.
County
And
is
then they'll
electric.
have to decide whether to pass that along or to
Like-
go out of business.
I was
70
at a meeting with, Kathleen James and Seth Bongertz a couple of weeks ago. They were presenting it as, initially it was pretty hard and fast, and now it's turned into something supposedly that is flexible down the road. They kind of see
Yeah.
whether it's working right or not.
I think when they see
If
the
it isn't,
pickup,
then they can adjust.
when they see the pickup
But-
trucks coming back from New Hampshire with 55-gallon drums and heating fuel in it,
Yeah,
I don't know
Yeah.
if that'll have
My concern though
any
is.
impacts, but that's what's gonna happen.
Anytime they had a lot of pushback, and then it was like, okay, we'll make it adjustable, and then it's like, okay, is it really adjustable?
Right.
It's,
Do you know if
Is there an
propane is
energy-
included in that?
Yeah, sure, it would be.
I think so.
probably, cause I think any oil and gas.
I mean,
product-
propane is a derivative of,
Yeah,
but it's a gas, it's not.
the strange thing, the thing I
I
could
guess
never
anything
figure
that's
out was
not
like,
electricity.
we wanna reduce the amount of, oil and gas we're using, so we're gonna charge our oil and gas dealers a whole bunch of money to have them convert people to other forms of energy. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, they'll just pass, and then, they'll pass the,
Well, they pointed out that,
They'll have to pass
initially
fees
there
on.
was like, so you're probably gonna have to pass a lot of that cost on to the consumer. They said,
Probably.
like,
You think?
all of it?
Right.
Do you think there's a map of the energy types throughout the state? I mean, I wonder how above Route 4, how much more people use electric? Like where the oil
is there a
users
different
are.
bill, Jim, that was?
What's that?
My understanding is that there was some bill that's gonna include a study that the PUC is gonna do,
Mm-hmm,
that's actually gonna talk about economic impacts,
Mhm.
and that was gonna then, once that study
Right,
comes
right,
back.
right, they are
that-
gonna, that's the classic old, let's do a study, but this is doing a study of how is it actually working out as we try to implement this thing. I
Okay,
think.
so it is gonna be activated and they're gonna study it.
I think so, but then it's required to actually do some policing on it. So
But-
people can't just say, oh, done, and,
Right.
How about all those people who can't afford to
Yeah.
pay that and can't afford to change their house over? It's gonna be the low-income people who are gonna be
Exactly.
hurting the
Well,
most.
there's gonna be a whole administrative arm to this, and some of the fees that they pay are gonna, in theory, go to the state to
So-
implement.
a lot
And
of
it's
these,
never
a
gonna
reallocation.
happen.
lot of these
The funding.
policies
That's
are
Never gonna
just
happen.
shockingly regressive in
Yes.
taxes.
Right.
And it's hard to, but
You
it's
just
very
drive
difficult.
people out of the state,
It's
that's.
very difficult to convince people in Montpelier that that's the case though.
Wait till they try to tax firewood, then we'll have a revolution.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, how do you do that?
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they can help me carry it, before I pay the tax on it.
You know, that's why it has occurred to me that I don't know if we can ask someone to ever ask for an appropriation, but that window dressers program is so helpful
Yeah.
to people that need that extra, and, but what Jim said was, he said, the people that probably need it the most, they don't ask for it, they
Yeah.
either don't think that they can, or they don't think that they should.
Or it's
We-
just not
we-
on their
we-
And those
radar.
things really
We
help, I
really-
mean, we have them at the visitor center up at Merck, and it's just, it's like a
Yeah.
different
Yeah,
ecosystem.
We need help finding people who need that help.
Yep.
Right,
Right.
and that's always been with a lot of this
Yeah.
implementation.
Absolutely.
70 cents.
But last
70
year,
cents per
we
gallon.
found, you know, we had, it was like close to 25% of them were, you know, free or next to free.
Yep.
Of the inserts,
yep,
we did.
no,
That was pretty good.
you gotta incentivize people, not penalize them.
Yep, on top of some payroll taxes that might be coming too.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
And businesses are gonna leave Vermont, because they're not gonna be able to afford it.
Towns pay payroll tax, which comes from property taxes.
Anyway, worthwhile, everyone reaching out to our representatives.
So for
Okay,
other business, we've got liquor licenses.
Right, so
Mhm.
do we recess? And, so,
Move that we become the liquor board.
okay, the second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
I move that we approve liquor licenses for the Dorset Union Store, the Dorset Theater, Meadowy Mint, and Has Gas Store.
I'll second that.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that literally all we do? It just seems so,
Yeah.
okay.
Move to
So,
close that hearing.
yeah, close that was quick.
Yep.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
The way we move things along
I
here.
like it, I like it.
Here's payroll, accounts payable.
Jim, do you wanna talk about that, email you sent around regarding appropriation?
Sure. Yeah, that was, yeah, I tried to just put it all down in the email. I didn't, wasn't trying to flout the open meeting laws here. Just figured I'd lay it out for everybody. I thought it was interesting because, you know, the issues came up, like, you know, we talked before about, you know, one, you know, childcare sort of, you know, organization
That's Nancy's fault.
getting funds and others not.
Right.
The issue was also raised with, which, actually Henry and I would like the okay to touch base with, ask a few questions to the, VNA and hospice about why the numbers are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got, you know, a few things that catch people's attention, and we've discussed a whole lot, how we can make the process better. In classic fashion, one of the things that shocked me was it was like, well, gee, you could do this and that, and I'm like, we actually are doing some of those things, you know, pointing out, look at it, did you read the report? Well, no. And so I think we've made some positive progress on it, but I think it's a subject that, they thought they could get their act in all together for a June 20th meeting. And I thought we could give it a little bit of thought and, potentially even, send out through the town newsletter or something like that. Hey, we're looking for input on next year's town meeting. It's, way in advance, but, here's your chance. And if we sort of advertise that as June 20th is a good time to discuss it. Maybe we can attract some bodies who are interested in discussing it. I think, you know, one of the things, as I said, that was sort of proposed, and I suggested probably didn't have great chance, was to move all of those, you know, each of those items to an Australian ballot item, which, you know, hey, you know, maybe people will wanna do that. I pushed it back to them to do the legwork and figure out, you know, if you wanna propose that, you figure out how to go about and propose that, and the select board, you know, I don't think the select board's gonna wanna be in the business of proposing that. If you guys wanna petition it, then you can petition it, to switch, you know, those votes to an Australian ballot. But I just thought, you know, it's been a topic of great interest to us. Obviously, there's some people in town who are really interested too. And I thought it'd be good to just try to, you know, devote a section of a meeting to getting input.
Yep.
Mhm.
I think the important thing, just to undergird that, is that we can't control who and how much money they ask for. Those are
Right.
the two things that we can't.
Yeah, so just FYI, I responded to Jim's email saying the one that really kind of irks me is the VNA $40,000 appropriation, especially when Manchester is only doing $10,000.
Right.
And so I, you know, instead of, I mean, the way to, I guess, appropriately handle it is right on the floor.
Correct.
Say, hey, you know, this is absurd, let's reduce this number, but I was thinking we as a select board could reach out directly to
Sure.
VNA and just say, hey, why don't you lower this to $10,000 so we're on equal footing with
And
Manchester?
I've met with the head of VNA before, and also, you know, I have no problem sort of reaching out and just saying, you know, let's just have a chat so we understand it. My guess is this is all just historic,
Right.
Sure.
that
It
we
was
were doing a much bigger number.
It was 20 for a long time, and then toward the tail end of, before Ravna became all of Southwest.
Right.
Yeah.
It went from 20 to 40.
So that was,
Um,
they needed 40 when they were Dorset because they were barely able to hold on.
Right.
And then
Right.
when Ravna came in,
Right.
was
I'm
right
sure
at
you know,
cusp of
Manchester
that.
was just given 10, and we had bumped it up to 40, and they said, whoa.
Manchester got
Stick
folded
with it.
in after, like a few years
Okay.
after Dorset, actually a handful of years after Dorset did. So Dorset was with Ravna for, I wanna say, like 4 to 5 years.
Mhm.
And
And Manchester was still doing their own,
Honestly, I think
Thing,
part of our
and then-
message is,
Ravna bought them out.
we have noticed, so let's talk about it, and let's make sure that it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And if Henry and I could have a chat with them, that,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Only thing I'd add to that is there's
Yeah.
Dorset representation on the
Yep.
VNA board,
yep,
so
Mhm.
you might wanna,
yep.
Is there?
Dave Sands,
Dave
right?
Sands,
Oh,
yeah. There may be somebody else
There
too.
was somebody
I think
else who
Peter
used to
Kinder
always get
There's
a-
traditionally 2.
I
Could
think
be.
I introduced Peter Kinder to them, and he joined it.
Yeah.
There's usually, I know Dave Sands is one, but there's usually
Yeah.
2.
I mean, again, of course, it's a good cause, but
Yeah.
times have
Yeah.
changed, their situation has changed, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense for our town to
Well,
be.
and I think
Putting that kind of money.
when they're presented as a unit at the town meeting, there's such a great disparity. There all, from the other end, there are a number of really well-meaning, high-performing, need-based groups that have never asked for an increase,
Right.
and they ask for such a small amount. So we've talked about that before too.
yeah.
The kind of it's not our job to level it, but to just, I think doing like a, kind of, just an assessment.
Yeah, just
Like an
being
audit.
responsible for
Yeah.
for our town dollars, because
Yep.
so much of it is just historical and is just kind of keeps
Yeah.
on going, someone should stop and say, let's just
Exactly.
think
there-
about this.
Another
That's a good
point that
idea.
came up that I didn't include in the note was we had discussed whether or not to do the the 3-year process
The-
and whether or not to, and there was some interest in, I said, well, the 3-year process may not go on certainly for larger amounts or something. We're to be no petition. But I said, all that's open game, like, it's worth discussing.
Yeah, the petition is the hammer that you have, you can require it or not.
Require them,
And
yep.
that's the, you could, there's a whole host of things you could do, but that's really the biggest kind of, piece that you've got to control it is whether or not you require the petition.
The other thing that Roger Squire brought to our attention at the meeting was that the sidewalks program was gonna need
Right.
Yep.
Big
quite
boost
an
next year.
increased amount of money. Is that real?
I mean, in the short term, yes, I mean, I think the.
If you wanna do that whole section, right?
That's
Up there.
Yeah, and how long do you wanna take to do it, that's kind of the.
Yeah, right now, we're just doing a little
We're
piece
just
at a
kind of
time.
doing piecemeal, I mean, when you started the whole thing, it was 6,000 feet of the stuff on both sides of town. Not all that's getting done, some of it was kind of, already redone or whatnot, so the scope is rather large, so it was like, how do you just kind of take a little bit at a time, just do a little neighborhood by neighborhood, and that's kind of been successful. But the problem they're running into now, that I'm sure Roger talked about, is
They need new stone.
connectivity, like doing a whole section, so they're not just
Mhm.
doing a.
30 feet.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
and then material
Yeah,
availability is.
particularly on here, on
a
this
big
side,
piece.
a lot of the marble's not in good shape, so then,
Right.
and that's when it gets expensive.
Mhm.
If you can find the houses where it's either buried under the grass and it's just been sitting there forever, it's perfect.
Mm.
Yeah, it's, one panel, it would be a little wider than one of these tables,
Mhm.
it's like $3,000,
So,
2 to 3.
at any rate,
That's
that will be
expensive.
coming up, so it's good for us to look at, in other ways, just
And
to
they've
make sure that we're spending
Save
responsibly.
30,000 here, we spent another
And
20,000.
they've married to the methodology, so that's the only thing I would say to
Mhm.
that, is that there's different methodologies that could save money, but they're married to the dry laid
Oh,
stone methodology.
interesting.
There was a lot of pushback for the cement, but I must say with the cement, it starts to deteriorate.
Who's
It
married?
starts-
Are we talking
Yeah.
about?
That's
it
easy.
just
It
starts to.
does, and that's if you use salt, a lot of salt on it, the cement will need to get
Yeah.
repointed, but you get wheelchairs over it.
That's the important thing.
Just back to the appropriations for 1 second. I do think something else that really would be helpful to look at if we were gonna do an audit of it over the next couple of months would be just figuring out the accountability. A reporting, some sort of, not penny to penny, but some sort of narrative report of how they use the funds.
In relation to Dorset,
Yes,
Mhm.
when they get an appropriation.
right.
But that's
It
one of
isn't
the
just
positive
out.
things I found, cause that was one of the suggestions they had, was, well, we asked them to do, say what they're doing in Dorset, and I said, if you look at the report,
Yeah.
just about everyone,
Everyone
it
says
does focus on what they're doing for Dorset
Yeah,
now.
even VNA said how many
Mhm.
clients they
Yep.
were servicing in
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dorset.
Yep.
I mean, there is like one or two that just sort of do a generic statement, but again, I think what we really need to focus on is that once it gets over a certain ask, you don't
Right.
need,
Yep.
people are just coming in asking for a couple $100 to jump through hurdles, but
Mhm.
when it gets to be a substantial amount, then I think we need to ask these questions, because I think townspeople think that we are looking
Mhm.
into this and they don't understand that our
Mhm.
hands are kind of tied.
Mhm.
Yep.
And there's nothing stopping individuals also from supporting all these organizations. So it's not that, the
Right.
town
Right.
necessarily has to do it, so,
Mhm.
but it's
Well, that's-
more to see the ones that are kind of outliers.
Right,
That's one of the points I was trying to make was that they were saying, well, people come to the meeting and then hear the presentation and they don't wanna be the difficult person and all that, and I'm like, but they said, that's why the town report has to come out like 5 weeks in advance.
Mhm.
Gives you plenty of time to look through, see what your issues are, they're almost always the same entities, and if you wanna, if if you've got some questions or issues, talk to some other people and, you know, do
Yeah.
something about it. Don't wait until town meeting to say, should I say to stand up? You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Yep.
It is hard, you've got
They
your
used
neighbors there.
to all be on the on Australian ballot.
Right.
But
That's
the
what I
ballots
remember.
were like 3 pages long.
Mhm.
I think the board at the time
Mhm.
wanted to kind of spark more discussion at the meeting and make the floor meeting more meaningful.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, if the floor meeting is just kind of cursory to an Australian ballot vote, there's really no
Yeah.
decisions
Right.
being
What's the
made.
point?
Mhm.
And then, yeah, people will tend not to go if
Mhm.
there's no decisions made at the meeting. So that,
Yep.
Yeah,
that was kind of the attempt was to draw that back in. Then we
Makes
got in,
sense.
then we got into, can we get reps from each entity to come, and then, you know, that's
Yep.
kind of how it's
I
evolved.
think I think it's improved dramatically from, you know, from 10 years ago.
Yep,
Yeah, I don't know that anybody else, has the specific requirement for reps to, for each rep to come in. A lot of times the big ones will, but.
so speaking of that, I realize I'm not going to be here on June 20th, so that doesn't mean you can't have the meeting, I'm unavailable.
Oh, shoot, I
I
may not be here
be there
either.
either.
You're not gonna be here?
I know I'm not here, actually.
I'm not quite sure of the dates, but I was,
You're thinking you are or you are not?
I'm thinking that I might not.
Okay, so if 3 of us are not here, then I
Right.
suggest we,
You can't do it.
Consider rescheduling.
I know for a fact I will not be here.
because I will,
On the 20th.
June 20th?
On the
June
June
20th.
I'll be
Yeah.
in Europe, so I can't Zoom.
My daughter's having a baby a week
Oh,
before.
my goodness
congratulations.
gracious.
That's awesome. Do they know what they're having?
Nope.
Good.
Yep.
I know, that always makes it fun.
Yeah.
I know,
June 20th.
Yep.
So,
How about the
Rob,
13th?
what's your schedule? Are there any days that are better for you?
Ooh.
That whole week, I'm gone from the 16th to the 25th.
I couldn't do the 12th. We got a fire district meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gone the 20th to the 29th.
What about the 26th? If you can't do it, can the rest of us be here, the 26th, Monday?
I think I'm open.
26th, I have another meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't work.
Let's see, what about the 13th?
Should work for me.
13th
what I'm
is that,
thinking.
not good for me. But I could, ooh, no, 14th is bad.
14th, 15th.
14th's bad, 15th works.
Oh, June 15th, Thursday.
I could do the 15th.
I don't like doing the 15th.
I'll be packing, but that's okay, if it's the only day, I mean, we
Okay,
don't
make
have
it
too
work.
many alternatives, so we could do it like, wait, did we say the 27th
I
of June?
can't.
Alright, you're going
What
to
about the
20th.
rest of you guys?
27th is bad for me too.
The 15th is better.
I can do the 15th.
Alright, then it's gonna have to be the 15th, because you can't do the 12th, right, and then Jim can't do it every other day.
I really do have board meetings all those nights.
You gotta retire from some of these.
Jeez
You're
Louise.
probably right.
Don't say that, Frank, you might
Not this
retire from
one,
this one.
not this one.
I mean, the only other thing would be if you guys wanted to do it the week that I'm gone, but not on the 20th, that's another possibility, but
Well,
if the 15th, does the 15th work?
If moving it to the 15th works for, you know,
Yeah.
Henry's a
15th.
question mark period.
Henry, when are you leaving?
20th to the
The
29th.
20th.
Oh, okay, okay.
So
the
15th works for
15th.
me.
I thought you'd know when it's
It'll
gonna.
be raining that day. Oh.
Well,
Is this a scheduled?
no, it's not.
Okay, so
June-
June 15th.
I know my airplane ticket is scheduled.
Okay. So I'll also mention to those folks that, you know, 15th, that at that meeting, we can kind of plan on spreading the word that, you know, hey, we're gonna talk about town meeting and how it works, and
Yep.
I'd like to have people's input.
I don't think.
It's just nice to ask people to try to get something to drive some people to come in for a
Mhm.
positive.
In terms of whether it goes on Australian ballot or it's on the floor, but that's really for the select board to decide,
Yep.
that's not, yeah.
But
They
if
don't
you
get
wanna,
to
if
decide.
you wanna switch something to Australian ballot, then you actually have
Have to have a
to
vote.
present a petition to put it on the next year's petition.
Yeah.
It takes 2 years to actually get it put on the Australian ballot. Cause you have to first, the next year you vote on whether or not to put it on the ballot. the following year.
And
And then the next year you vote on whether or not
I see.
With a quick
to
system.
should,
Yeah, because I do like the idea of at least having it on the floor with the larger bequests, because I think the larger requests.
it's also, you know, there's something really positive about, you know, I like the discussions, and then knowing you have the vote mean people actually care about listing and all that stuff. And it also, you know, one of the problems with so much of the Australian ballot stuff, people, you know, they don't actually take the time to
No.
read up on things in
Right.
advance.
They just think it's
No,
all
but you get-
pre-approved.
You get more no's on an Australian ballot than you do
Right.
traditionally on the voice vote.
But not
My
necessarily
experience.
educated no's, they're just basically,
No, correct.
No.
We had a year where the budget, town budget went down like 3%, and people still voted no. So, those are the ones that like 20 people, like, where do you, come on.
But, you know, annual meeting
Where
will
do you
become irrelevant if we.
That's the
take
fine
these
line of,
Right.
Appropriations
Right.
out.
that's the fine line of.
There'll be
Necessary
nothing to
talk
show
about.
up for.
yeah, cause the school board annual meeting, you know, we weren't voting on the you know, there wasn't anything of real substance. Not that many people showed up, and it was, you know, it was hard to engage them
Yeah.
on, you know, people, please, you know, okay, ask some questions, and, you know, here's some, tell you some stuff. And
Yeah,
they're like,
unless you have like bond votes or project-specific
Yeah.
stuff where you're,
Yep.
you know.
It's hard to get
The rates are
people
through the roof.
engaged.
Yeah,
Move we adjourn?
okay. Second,
Second.
all in favor, say
Aye.
adjourned.